Hi, I'm Rashonda Kate. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We are on the second part of Chapter 9, Doubts and Fears. So let's dive in. He kissed the baby and left Rena to her own reflections, to which his presentation of the case had given a new turn. It had never before occurred to her to regard silence in the light of self-sacrifice. It had seemed a sort of sin. Her brother's argument made of it a virtue. It was not the first time nor the last that right and wrong had been a matter of viewpoint. And I know I read that last time, but I was like, let me segue in a little bit more than I normally do. And yes, right and wrong is often a matter of viewpoint. And sometimes that's okay, but not all the time. Tryon himself furnished the opening for Warwick's proposed examination. The younger man could not long remain silent upon the subject uppermost in his mind. I am anxious, John, he said, to have Rowena name the happiest day of my life, our wedding day. When the trial in Edgecombe County is finished, I shall have no further business here and shall be ready to leave for home. I should like to take my bride with me and surprise my mother. Okay, so it's like 1900, no, late 1800s. It was written in 1900, 1901. Anyway, late 1800s. I get mail and everything was not what it is today. But whoo, just to walk up in your house with a wife. Hey, mom, got married. I would be upset if my son just walked up in the house with a wife. Not that I would necessarily be angry he got married, but like, you didn't think you should let me know that you were taking this huge life step, getting married? Like, you didn't want me to participate in your happiness? I know it wouldn't be about me, but I would be upset if my son walked in with a wife and gave me no kind of warning about it. I mean, I like to think I would get over it, but if you're watching, kid, don't do it. All right. Mothers, thought Warwick, are likely to prove inquisitive about their sons' wives, especially when taken unawares in matters of such importance. You got that right. This seemed a good time to test the liberality of Tryon's views and to put forward a shield for his sister's protection. Are you sure, George, that your mother will find the surprise agreeable when you bring home a bride of whom you know so little and your mother nothing at all? Tryon had felt that it would be best to surprise his mother. She would need only to see Rena to approve of her, but she was so far prejudiced in favor of Blanche Leary that it would be wisest to present the argument after having announced the irrevocable conclusion. I get that. I don't agree, but I get it. And whose voice do we have here? Is it Tryon's? He's calling her Rena. Anyway, I got all off in names last time. I'm going to try to keep it together. Rena herself would be a complete justification for the accomplished deed. I think you ought to know, George, continued Warwick without waiting for a reply to his question, that my sister and I are not of an old family or a rich family or a distinguished family, that she can bring you nothing but herself, that we have no connections of which you could boast and no relatives to whom we should be glad to introduce you. You must take us for ourselves alone. We are new people. My dear John, replied the young man warmly, there is a great deal of nonsense about families. If a man is noble and brave and strong, if a woman is beautiful and good and true, did you notice that beautiful was first? If she is beautiful, good and true. If she's just good and true, she can't be ugly. Dang, she has to be beautiful, good and true. And Rena is beautiful, but wow, why is beauty demanded? The man has to be noble and brave and strong. I could take issue with that too, but wow, beautiful? The woman has to be beautiful, good and true? All right. If a man is noble and brave and strong, if a woman is beautiful and good and true, what matters it about his or her ancestry? If an old family can give them these things, then it is valuable. If they possess them without it, then of what use is it except as a source of empty pride, which they would be better without? If all new families were like yours, there would be no advantage in belonging to an old one. All I care to know of Rowena's family is that she is your sister, and you'll pardon me, old fellow, if I add that she hardly needs even you. She carries the stamp of her descent upon her face and in her heart. That's interesting that it's the stamp of her descent. So he is assuming that she descends from people who are strong and brave and noble and beautiful and good and true. And I'm not saying that she doesn't, but he just gave a whole speech about it doesn't matter what her family is, but I can see she had a good family and who she turned out to be. Hmm. It makes me glad to hear you speak in that way, returned Warwick, delighted by the young man's breadth and earnestness. Oh, I mean every word of it, replied Tryon. Ancestors indeed. For Rowena, I will tell you a family secret, John, to prove how little I care for ancestors. My maternal great great grandfather, 150 years ago, was hanged, drawn, and quartered for stealing cattle across the Scottish border. How is that for a pedigree? Behold in me the lineal descent of a felon. Warwick felt much relieved at this. Okay, I tried to move on. Oh, I had my great great grandfather was a felon. What's that got to do with you, boo? Nothing. Nobody's even thinking about that. He got all caught up in what white manhood is, I suppose. And it's like white manhood doesn't include felony, except for apparently it does. And nobody's thinking anything about it. Nobody's thinking anything less of you, Tryon, because your great great grandfather was a felon. And why even did he steal the cattle? Was he hungry? Like, I'm not saying you should steal things because you're hungry, but context makes a difference. Behold in me the lineal descendant of a felon. Warwick felt much relieved at this avowal. His own statement had not touched the vital point involved. It had been, at the best, but a half truth, but Tryon's magnanimity would doubtless protect Rena from any close inquiry concerning her past. It even occurred to Warwick for a moment that he might safely disclose the secret to Tryon, but an appreciation of certain facets of history and certain traits of human nature constrained him to put the momentary thought aside. It was a great relief, however, to imagine that Tryon might think lightly of this thing that he need never know. That is a fantastic sentence. It was a great relief, however, to imagine that Tryon might think lightly of this thing that he need never know. You might be okay with it, but you're never going to know. Well, Rena, he said to his sister when he went home at noon, I've sounded George. What did he say? She asked eagerly. I told him we were people of no family and that we had no relatives that we were proud of. That hurts my feelings. Like, you're not proud of your mom? I get you can't hang out with her, but you're not proud of her? And that we had no relatives that we were proud of. He said he loved you for yourself and would never ask you about your ancestry. He did not say that. Let's go back. He poo-pooed ancestry, but he also said she carries the stamp of her descent upon her face and in her heart. He did not say he would not ask her of his ancestry. And at no point did he say he loved her, but he did say that she was enough. You are contemporizing here, Warwick. He did not say that he loved you for yourself and would never ask you about your ancestry. Lies, Warwick, lies. Oh, I am so glad, exclaimed Rena joyfully. This report left her very happy for about 3 hours, or until she began to analyze carefully her brother's account of what had been said. Warwick's statement had not been specific. He had not told Tryon the thing. George's reply, in turn, had been a mere generality. The concrete fact that oppressed her remained unrevealed, and her doubt was still unsatisfied. Rena was occupied with this thought when her lover next came to see her. Tryon came up the sanded walk from the gate and spoke pleasantly to the nurse, a good-looking yellow girl who was seated on the front steps playing with little Albert. I don't know. Can you imagine this juxtaposition between Rena and the nurse, a good-looking yellow girl? Is Rena not a good-looking yellow girl? I mean, okay, she looks white, but is she that much lighter than the good-looking yellow girl? So we have two good-looking light-skinned women here standing next to each other, at least metaphorically standing next to each other. What makes this yellow girl good-looking? Is it that she looks like a white woman? Is that what makes Rena good-looking? We have to pause and think about these things. We cannot just read this sort of literature with these color cues and not place people side by side in our minds. We've got to do it. It's a moral imperative. Okay, maybe not a moral imperative, but we need to do it. All right, I'm going to keep reading, and I'm actually really liking leaning up against my desk like this. I don't know what your experience is, but I'm a little more comfortable. All right. Tryon came up the sanded walk from the gate and spoke pleasantly to the nurse, a good looking yellow girl who was seated on the front steps playing with little Albert. He took the boy from her arms and she went to call Miss Warwick. Rena came out, followed by the nurse who offered to take the child. Never mind, Mimey, leave him with me, said Tryon. The nurse walked discreetly over into the garden, remaining within call, but beyond the hearing of conversation in an ordinary tone. Does she have supersonic hearing? Can she hear what they're saying? Do you know the song by JJ Fad, Supersonic? Rena, darling, said her lover, when shall it be? Surely you won't ask me to wait a week. Why, that's a lifetime. Rena was struck by a brilliant idea. She would test her lover. That sounds like a bad idea. Love was a very. Did you see First Night? That movie with Heath Ledger and it has Chaucer in it from the guy who plays in the Avengers and the woman's name I don't know, but anyway, she tested her lover. Seems like a bad idea. Let's read and see what happens. Rena was struck by a brilliant idea. She would test her lover. Love was a very powerful force. She had found it the greatest, grandest, sweetest thing in the world. Tryon had said that he loved her. He had said scarcely anything else for several weeks, surely nothing else worth remembering. She would test his love by a hypothetical question. You say you love me, she said. Now I have salt and pepper in my head. Um, Sorry. You say you love me, she said, glancing at him with a sad thoughtfulness in her large dark eyes. How much do you love me? I love you all one can love. True love has no degrees. It is all or nothing. Would you love me? She asked with an air of coquetry that masked her concern, pointing toward the girl in the shrubbery, if I were Albert's nurse yonder. If you were Albert's nurse, he replied with a joyous laugh, he would have to find another within a week, for within a week we should be married. The answers, I don't even get that. The answer seemed to fit the question, but in fact, Tryon's mind and Rena's did not meet. The two intelligent persons should each attach a different meaning to so simple a form of words as Rena's question was the best ground for her misgiving with regard to the marriage. But love blinded her. She was anxious to be convinced. She interpreted the meaning of his speech by her own thought and by the ardor of his glance, and was satisfied with the answer. And now, darling, pleaded Tryon, will you not fix the day that shall make me happy? I shall be ready to go away in 3 weeks. Will you go with me? Yes, she answered in a tumult of joy. She would never need to tell him her secret now. It would make no difference with him, so far as she was concerned. And she had no right to reveal her brother's secret. She was willing to bury the past in forgetfulness now that she knew it would have no interest for her lover. Well, and that was chapter 9 of House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda.